Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki SCANZ Conference 2021. Ko Andrea Liberator, toku ingoa, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everyone to today's session of the SCANZ Conference 2021. My name is Andrea Liberator and I am the Associate Director of the New Zealand International Science Festival, and I will be your host today. Also supporting me as host is Caerdwyn Roberts, so thank you for your support here. SCANZ is the Science Communicators Association of New Zealand, which is a network of people who tell stories about scientific topics. We come from a range of scientific and non-scientific backgrounds and hold regular events for people who are keen to hone their storytelling skills and connect with other professionals in the science communication space. We have a selection of 4 talks for you today, and we'll be holding all patai questions until the end of at the end of the session. If you have a question for one of our speakers today, please use the chat function here in Zoom to ask it. Caerdwyn will be collating all of these questions for us, and I will relay them to the speakers at the end of today's session, the last about 20 minutes or so. Just please remember that when you do ask a question, make sure to let us know which speaker your question is for. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. First up is Mary Hurley. Mary Hurley is a manager of the Science Roadshow, which is a national program that travels around Aotearoa New Zealand, working to promote science education to primary and intermediate students. Mary's talk will be followed by a trio of speakers. That will be Jana Makar. Jana is based at the University of Auckland and coordinates a variety of engagement initiatives and external communications to raise the profile of New Zealand's e-science infrastructure, or NESI's, activities, impacts, and collaborations. Originally from Canada, she spent the early part of her career working as a newspaper journalist before joining the field of science communication. Joining her will be Hannah Edwards. Hannah is the Communications and Marketing Manager for SCANZ, New Zealand's National Research and Education Network. Hannah values marketing connections and working collaboratively with SCANZ members, partners, and New Zealand's research organizations to produce shared communications that demonstrate the value of the network and research that it enables. And finishing out that trio of speakers is Claire Grant. Claire is the Communications Manager for Genomics Aotearoa and is responsible for promoting its research activities and contributing to improving understanding of genomics in New Zealand. Based in Dunedin, Claire has extensive experience in communications advisory and public relations, including working in print and radio and as a contract communications and public relations advisor. So those 3 speakers will be talking together. Our 4th talk today will be by Zechariah Reuelu. Zechariah is currently completing a master's at Victoria University's Innovation and Commercialization course with a research thesis exploring a Tokelau framework to be the catalyst to unlock Tokelau and Pacific social and economic well-being. He has led the development and implementation of several Indigenous responsiveness programs to empower Pacific communities to be at the decision-making table, driving and leading innovative solutions. He worked with the Tokelau Porirua community to explore a non-Western approach towards retelling Indigenous atoll stories using technology to preserve the Tokelau language, traditions, and heritage. And our last speaker today will be Dr. Gianna Savoie. Gianna is a senior lecturer and director of filmmaking at the Center for Science Communication at the University of Otago, and she is also the founder of the nonprofit organization Ocean Media Institute. As an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, she's written and produced films for major broadcasters, including PBS, National Geographic, BBC, and others, and she focuses her research on diversity and inclusivity in science media. So a very special haere mai and welcome to you, our speakers today. Sounds like we're in for a very interesting hour of talks. Really looking forward to it. And so without further ado, I will hand things over to our very first speaker today, Mary Hurley. Kia ora, Mary.
Kia ora, thank you. Exciting to be here. So today my talk is called Reaching Out and Inspiring the Next Generation of Scientists Across Aotearoa New Zealand through the Science Roadshow. So for the last few decades, there has been growing concern regarding science education within primary and secondary schools across Aotearoa New Zealand. Many schools are ill-equipped, lacking effective science programs, but perhaps most importantly, our teachers have low confidence levels when it comes to teaching science. Correspondingly, we are seeing a decay curve in our students' attitudes to science. In Year 4, 70% see futures for themselves as, for example, astronauts or vets and marine biologists. By Year 8, there is a 45% decline in students' science enthusiasm. And by Year 13, the percentage of these once enthusiastic students has dropped to 10%. Addressing these factors at a grassroots level and getting more hands-on science learning experiences into schools to engage these students is key. Not only does this encourage the pursuit of STEM careers in the future, but fundamentally it opens the door for science-savvy citizens that push forward our economy and assist in the creation of sustainable futures. Today, we are looking at how we can merge different disciplines and perspectives to promote science engagement in kids and adults, which is where the National Science Technology Roadshow Trust comes into play. A circus of science, technology, and dramatic flair, the Science Roadshow is a vehicle, literally, of course, but also metaphorically, in the sense that it can be used to introduce students to the world they live in while contributing to the structure and disciplinary knowledge they need to understand it. Since the 1980s, the Science Roadshow has travelled Aotearoa, providing science-based cause and effect hands-on learning experiences with tailored classroom-ready resources for students in both urban and rural schools. In fact, more than 1.5 million New Zealanders under the age of 40 have visited the Science Roadshow since its inception. Throughout this time, the Roadshow core value remains the same. We want kids from all backgrounds to ultimately recognise their scientific potential. Built around fun, exploration, and informal experiences, the Science Roadshow creates an environment where children are relatively free of a must do this, must do that now attitude. Time and time again, this has proven to be an effective mechanism to promote engagement. The teachers are in turn brought into the shared experiences where students are in control of how the learning is done. The Science Roadshow sits under the umbrella of the National Science Technology Roadshow Trust, an organisation which works to engage kids and support the science curriculum, while also integrating scientific knowledge into other areas like math and even history. In this way, we present science more as a way of understanding the world rather than a standalone subject. The Trust has a twofold approach. The first is through the Roadshow itself, which we will return to. The second is through the Sir Paul Callaghan Science Academy, which works to further support teachers. While we recognise the Science Roadshow's ability to engage kids and supplement teachers, it became apparent over time that the latter were challenged by the ever-evolving science curriculum. We saw a need for in-service training that empowered them to engage with the curriculum, not only because they had to, but because it's an exciting thing to do. So anyway, back to the Roadshow. A session with the Roadshow consists of 2 shows, which introduce key scientific concepts with time in between to explore more than 60 hands-on exhibits. We also provide ready-to-use resources for teachers in the classroom to prepare for their visit, and then follow-up resources to continue the learning after we leave. What do these shows look like? Well, there's always the exciting one. This year we had the Up, Down, All Around show, which was all about gases. In other words, exploding balloons and liquid nitrogen. You can probably imagine how that was received. But our other show introduced 2 very important concepts to the kids, the fair test and the power of citizen science. As I'm sure many of you are aware, science for citizenship is critical, and we don't have to look any further than the COVID pandemic to understand why. The shows get the students thinking, but they are just a small part of the science experience. In fact, some attendees would say that that's the least exciting part. The magic happens, if I dare use the word magic, when the students are out on the floor and among the exhibits. So with the Science Roadshow, we work to embrace the nature of science strand, which explores how science knowledge is created and used in the world, utilizing the 5 foundational science capabilities. This includes gathering and interpreting data, using evidence, critiquing evidence, interpreting representations, and engaging with science. We're introducing these ideas to kids from 5 on. And to do that, we use our exhibits. These exhibits are organized into themes, which we update yearly to reflect some of the current issues in science and society, while also augmenting knowledge acquisition as per the science curriculum. Next year, for example, one of our themes is ecology and environment, and this is to reflect the shift in the curriculum to a more localized approach. So this is getting the kids involved in their backyard. In these sessions, we are playing to two different audiences, the kids, of course, but also the teachers who are looking for keywords and ideas to take back to the classrooms. Each of our exhibits comes with a context board, which assists the readers in connecting to a basic concept, which underpins the idea that they're having. The keywords found on the context board and throughout the shows are a point of entry, which we then tie back to the resources we provide. Science for citizenship, though, is the fundamental driver in the long game. We believe that if you do not begin fostering a positive connection to science in schools, then you cannot expect it to happen later down the line. Of course, not everyone will be a scientist, but everyone will engage with science throughout their lives, which is where our collaborations are incredibly important. This year, we were able to establish a meaningful partnership with Manaaki Whenua. Their goal was to extend the reach and participation of the Garden Bird Survey, while we wanted to effectively display how citizen science can be utilised. The Science Roadshow was able to bring an existing exhibit, audio identification, i.e. sensory observations, which was then supplemented by interactive material and content provided by Manaaki Whenua. With this collaboration, we were able to encourage students to take notice of the birds in their backyards and also promote ongoing learning post-visit through the provision of resources for teachers to use in the classroom. Not only do the kids get to know more about the natural environment, but they will get to see the results of their involvement on a national level and how this contributes to the knowledge of ecological change. And for us, this is where it's most important. We're not all going to end up scientists in the normal sense, but we are all going to interact with science. With collaborations like Manaaki Whenua, we are able to promote positive science experiences for students throughout the country and empower them to engage with science from a young age. By introducing these key ideas early, we are creating an environment where participation in the constructs of science, including critical thinking, is second nature. The Roadshow is a vehicle that puts these new ideas and experiences in front of those who will use it most, our tamariki. And I think I spoke too fast, but that comes to the end of what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for that, that talk. Very interesting. I know that I'm very keen to come and see the Roadshow when you come through Dunedin next. It sounds like a really great program, and what an amazing opportunity for kids, and as you say, how important it is right now to be getting that kind of scientific thinking set in, even if kids aren't going to be going on to become scientists themselves. This past 2 years have really shown us how important that critical thinking, those critical thinking skills are. So thanks for that, Mary. Really appreciate it. All right, next up we have our trio of speakers. So please, kia ora to Jana, Hannah, and Claire.
Kia ora, thank you. Kia ora everyone, my name is Gianna Makar and I'm the Communications Manager with New Zealand eScience Infrastructure, or NESI for short. I'm co-presenting today with two colleagues, Claire and Hannah, because we found that our communication paths across our three organizations have woven together quite a bit over the last few years. We'll share a bit of background around that and then take a look forward at what we would like to see as opportunities that exist to expand our collaboration into a broader community of practice for others working in communications and outreach roles within New Zealand's e-research sector. So first off, I'll hand over to Claire.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Claire Grant Takuingawa. I'm the Communications Manager for Genomics Aotearoa, a collaborative platform of 5 New Zealand universities and 5 CRIs based within the University of Otago. We were set up to be part of the global advances in genomics and informatics research to gain value specific to New Zealand from this emerging knowledge. We have research exemplar projects, national bioinformatics platform, a comprehensive bioinformatics training program, and a data repository to securely store and share genomic data within the Māori values context.
Great. And then NESI. NESI itself is a collaboration as well. We have investment from the University of Auckland, NIWA, University of Otago, Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research, and MB. We deliver a national platform of computing resources and e-research services to help researchers tackle complicated or data-intensive research challenges. So NESI does this by providing computing platforms like the data center that you'll see pictured in the little image at the bottom left. And we also do that through consultancy, where Nessie technical experts will work with research project teams to help them analyze their data or optimize their use of the computing platforms. We'll also do training to help researchers upskill and build confidence and experience in using computational and data science approaches in their research. And we actually partner with Genomics Aotearoa to do this within the bioinformatics and genomics communities. And then we also offer data services, whether that's storing, sharing, or transferring large data sets. And we do much of that work in collaboration with REANZ as well. So really there's collaborations going on all around us. Over to you, Hannah.
Thanks. Kia ora everyone. I'm Hannah, the Communications and Marketing Manager for REANZ, which stands for the Research and Education Advanced Network New Zealand. We are New Zealand's national research and education network, which means that we support the networking infrastructure and over-the-top services that enable researchers to transfer data and collaborate on a global scale. Our members are organisations from the research and education sector, so New Zealand's universities, CRIs, other organisations, and we're a small team that's based in New Zealand, but we're also connected globally to over 120 other international networks. In my role, I work closely with the team, our members and partners like Nessie and Genomics Aotearoa to surface and share the examples of how the network has been used to support research. And as Jana and Claire have said, the work that we do is deeply rooted in collaboration with these partners, but also our member organisations. And we are also funded via MB and our members. We were established to support and enable research, and we do this by managing the network and the tools and services that allow researchers to move large data sets at speed and scale, and making those connections that enable international research collaboration.
So since we've been working together, Jana, Hannah and myself have seen some issues common to all of us in New Zealand science communications. And these include making eResearch relevant and easy to understand, encouraging and retaining people to work in science, particularly maths and bioinformatics, providing timely, quality, evidence-based information and data to counter misinformation, and I know we all get that, matching up communication channels and messages to reach different demographics, supporting researchers to gain social license for their project, ensuring health science benefits all populations, and communicating complex sustainability problems that need community and multi-organisation collaborations. We're not just producers of content, our role is facilitation. So as knowledge brokers, I believe we need to stay one step ahead of what our researchers and our community needs. So as cross-discipline research collaborations grow, like ours does, those of us working in individual government-funded organisations also need to work out of our communication silos. We need to pool our strengths and work together. We need to find practical ways of utilising each other's knowledge, experience and capability, collaborating on mutually beneficial projects, and we need a fresh look at how to help researchers get and interpret information directly. The type of information that doesn't necessarily make a media release, like new collaborations, new equipment methods, irrelevant research results. Genomics Aotearoa's new data repository and what that might mean for researchers and their practice is a good example. So I'd ask, can we extend communications within the New Zealand research community? No.
Yeah, and so within that community, the three of us have really come to rely on and value our cross-organizational comms collaborations. Together, we've hosted sector conferences, we delivered training series, and we've showcased some of the important research that each of our organizations support. Spurred in part by the fact that each of us are located in a different city, as well as COVID moving everything online, much of the work between Hannah, Claire, and I has happened remotely. Our monthly Zoom catch-ups have served us very well with benefits seen across personal, professional, and organizational layers. Some of those are listed here on the slide, from collegial support, where each one-woman shows within our organizations being the one to, steer the ships for communication specifically. We've also shared tips and tricks, and it's also helped us disseminate information to our communities. Collecting with colleagues who share similar workloads and frustrations has really helped with our energy levels during the challenging lockdown times too. Those times when you could simply grumble monthly newsletter and the others would know exactly what you mean. So within the three of us, it's really inspired us to weave our connections beyond New Zealand. Hannah, she mentioned, is part of a broader international NREN community, so she's tapped into those comms and marketing resources. And I've been exploring ways to exchange knowledge and resources and best practice with comms counterparts in Australia's eResearch sector. So we know that more can be achieved if we connect with eResearch communicators in different regions and countries. So we're really keen to see how we can support that even further.
And so to help us try and do that, we have some propositions. So we propose that we look into ways that we can connect and grow collegiality between comms and PR professionals in organisations across the sector, possibly as a regular role-specific catch-up or workshop as a part of the annual SCANZ conference series, or maybe more informally as well as a catch-up monthly or on a quarterly basis via Zoom. This means that we would be able to investigate and identify potential collaborations, like the relationships the three of us have established as practitioners. And they not only benefit our organisations by sharing stories more widely, but they also benefit ourselves with that support and a good laugh every now and again as well. So establishing a community of practice brings an opportunity to share in our passions for eResearch, research collaborations, what they achieve, and it also just gives us an opportunity to learn more from others.
Yep. So basically, we'd like to take this conversation beyond just today's session and dive into it a little bit more deeply. We're hosting a session on November 30th, and I've just put the link into the chat there. We would love you to come along and chat about this with us further. What could this look like? What could we each give to a community of practice? Are you within this eResearch sector and looking for ways to connect? We'd really like to just take more than 8 minutes to dive a little deeper and hear what people have to say. So, we posted a lot of questions today, but we would really like to get together with you and chat about some answers. And so again, there's existing communications channels. How can we support this? Is there a group already like this? What ideas do we have for fostering this kind of collaboration? That is our pitch, and we hope that if you're interested, you will come along and continue the discussion with us on the 30th. And Claire, do you have anything further that you would like to add? Otherwise, we've got our contact information up there too. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you've got questions or if you can't make it on the 30th, and we can keep you in the loop.
Just like to just add that we work in eResearch, but we're really keen to talk to all science communicators, because there's probably more things we have in common than not for people who work as public relations or communications advisors within those government organisations. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora, and thanks for the opportunity, and love participating in SCANZ, always really enjoy it. So yeah, thanks.
Great, kia ora. Thank you to the three of you for that talk. It was great. What a great resource you guys provide, not just to the organizations that you work with, but also just the support that you guys are showing for each other, and wanting to expand that support to a lot of others is really great initiative. So thank you for that. I would like to remind people that if they have a comment or a question for our speakers, please use the chat function. If you didn't catch us at the beginning, all of the questions for our speakers are going into the chat, and we've got someone behind the scenes working to coordinate all of those. Questions are going to be asked at the very end of the session. And if you do ask a question, excuse me, please remember to note who the question is for, since we have a number of speakers today. And with that, I will pass over to our next speaker, who is Zechariah. Kia ora, Zechariah.
Mahalo nei, ngā koutou. Mumu lava hakatai te awa noa, hakatai lava kou te mātua. te pule te mahai au e tautala. I just wanted to greet you in the Tokelau language. We celebrated the last Pacific language 2 weeks ago, Tokelau language, being the last, and I'll greet you in our mother tongue. And I'm really here just to share a story that we, as a community with our innovative partners, is working to increase our Pacific and Tokelau student in these realms in terms of their aspiration. And so I'll just start with our story, and I hope that you can enjoy and see how we can give you some encouragement today. Thank you. So I'm on behalf of the Atafu Tokelau community group, which has been residing in Aotearoa. Next page, please. Our Tokelau community present in New Zealand go way back more than 50 years, when the New Zealand government, through the resettlement, invited our Tokelau community, which is a small atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The highest point is 5 meters, and it's surrounded by ocean. And obviously in the last few weeks, especially in the climate change conference, Tuvalu and Tokelau are those nations at the forefront of climate change challenges. So we have a population here in New Zealand of roughly about just over 4,000 and 1,500 back in Tokelau. Many people don't realize it, but Tokelau is a territory of New Zealand, the furthest territory that New Zealand governs through administration. Thank you. Next. And so just a brief snapshot, the Tokelau community has established for many decades and has been instrumental in key achievement that reflects the success in areas of culture, language, education resources, and publication that has contributed to national and regional success for Tokelau here in New Zealand. These are some of our civil leaders. In 2012, thank you, 2012, our community constructed a Tokelau canoe, the first of its kind outside Tokelau, where it was awarded the Pacific Heritage Award for intergeneration project of traditional building, passing on knowledge, not just about building of the construct of the waka, but also understanding the winds and the environment. And incidentally, in Polynesian history or metaphor, the term Tokelau means the northern winds of Polynesia. And so our cultural ancestors have always been able to read and navigate and manage wind in that context. Thank you. In 2017, our group launched a 5-year strategic plan. Our reality living in Aotearoa New Zealand required us to be open to new skills, technology, knowledge, and experiences, and new ideas to ensure our survival and ongoing input into this community in the 21st century. A plan that serves a framework to guide and help Tokelau to revitalize our culture and language in New Zealand. We also needed to focus on our young people to assist them to navigate areas that we were not familiarized here in New Zealand, such areas of technology, diverse areas in marine, biology, science, and the creative industry, which were some of our targets in 2017. Thank you. One of those areas was around how do we increase Tokelau and Pacific, and particularly in Canada Street and Paurua, one of the poorest areas in Wellington, in terms of increasing opportunities in the STEM area. We recognize and acknowledge the schools that are doing STEM, but we also took responsibility as a Tokelau community group of what part we can play to actually not only just bring it to the forefront, but also bring new narratives that can actually bring and break down barriers and open the eyes of our Tokelau and Pacific students to the world of STEM has to offer. Thank you. And so what that looked like was in 2017, when we launched that in collaboration with the young people in our community, we developed a hub that taught and maintained our nganga tokelau, our language, which was a community setting where we had our cultural advisors, because we have cultural capital and intelligence in the community, not in the school. And so through that, we were able to collaborate with up to a number of colleges and intermediate, where we wanted to teach the Tokelau language and have Pacific unit standards wrap around it in that program. Thank you. And so from that piece of work, in 2019, we had 10 students that completed NCEA Pacific Studies Unit Standard. All of those 10 kids were assessed and they passed with excellent and merit. For the 13 students, the credits were helpful in the completion of the NCS Level 3. And this was another big achievement. Year 9 and 10 students sitting the unit standards were able to get Level 1 credits before moving into year 11. This was the first time Tokelauan unit standards happened in our community, let alone in New Zealand. And so we were able to have nimble of understanding with a number of colleges and schools to allow their students to participate in the program, and with our cultural advisors that navigated this space. So that was a huge, huge step forward. On the back of this, we were invited to the biggest Polynesian festival, Pacifica Polyfest in Auckland, where they wanted to introduce the Tokelauan language as part of the speeches, which has never happened before. Thank you. Through that piece of work, Aotearoa College, which has a large Pacific and Tokelauan community of students, decided to actually pilot a language class for their students from year 9 to year 13. And because we recognize the community that there is no Tokelauan teacher with those content, we worked to co-design the content where then the language teacher will put the framework around it to assist it. To date, we have 32 kids, not all of them are Tokelauan, learning Tokelau language and culture. In 2020, during COVID, we ran an online program where we had up to 16 kids learning for 6 weeks, basic code, where they developed with our elders the very first Tokelauan language app. All these kids had an interest in the STEM space. And then later this year, early this year, or actually May this year, the government made an announcement, the New Zealand government, which is a significant milestone, that the Tokelauan language is now a subject in terms of NCEA. We have advocated for the last 4 years, when we started this journey, why Tokelauan was not a subject. And as a result of that, we are running holiday programs. Last Saturday, we had to cancel because of the bad weather in Wellington, a marine program, a community marine program, where we are teaching Indigenous knowledge that are complementary to New Zealand-born kids in terms of what they see in rock pools. What's the meaning of seahorse or eel? What's the significance of that? And the ecosystem that we are teaching and passing on. This course program is not in the school, and we're developing this as part of the wind shift as a result of the school system and allowing Tokelauan subject, where we are developing content for schools. And so this system change or step change has been significant for us in terms of the work we're doing in Cannon Street and Porirua. Thank you. I'm going to land very shortly to finish my presentation. Next page, please. Yeah, and so I want to finish. Our first guest speaker talked about the Science Roadshow. One of our very first science holiday program was this. We had the roadshow for 2 days. I believe we were one of the first Pacific group outside the school system to actually invite them to our community hall to have this. We ran one program, and then we ran another program more in depth for the older kids. And the reason I bring that up, because I believe that collaboration would not have happened for the things that we've happened 5 years later. And my last picture as a result from this project, thank you, is a picture of the changing landscape of our community. Every year we have aspiration, motivation in January for students going back to all forms of school. And this picture here are all kids going to university. And one of those students came in 2017, is the guy in the glasses, the white with the afro, was moved and inspired. And he's now 4 years in his health science in Otago University. And so we have never done this to try and make evidence or prove evidence. What we have tried to do in a very organic and Tokelau way was work with those in this space, using their expertise, using our community strength, our ability to engage with Pacific and Tokelau families, families that sometimes don't go to school interviews or board meetings or fundraising, but they felt safe for whatever reason to come into their cultural settings. And so we were able to leverage on that to reach out to those vulnerable communities and open up opportunity. Makar sent his regards. I wanted him to be a guest speaker. I finish on that note that we're doing what we can in our small space to increase collaboration to move Pacific into the science space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tēnā koe, Zechariah. That's a really wonderful story that you've got to share there, and what an impact you've had on the lives of those that you've worked with and will continue to do so, I'm sure, as you go forward from here. So thank you for sharing your experiences on that with us. We do need to move on to our very last speaker of the day, and that is Gianna Savoie. So I will turn things over to you. Kia ora, Gianna. Just 1 second, Gianna, we're gonna unmute you here. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, it's not letting me do it for you. Sorry, everyone, we seem to be having a little bit of difficulty here. Inga, are you there to help with unmuting Gianna?
I've just asked her
Oh,
to
I've got her.
unmute.
Okay. Is that
Yep.
good?
Oh, there we go. Yep, there you
All
go.
right.
All good, thank you.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. All right. All good. Well, kia ora and kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this today. It's really been enlightening so far. I love listening to everyone speak. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about my work, because it not only involves, but actually really depends on weaving together these unexpected relationships. So I'm going to start with a little story, a little once upon a time about my life. So I was actually working very happily about 20 years ago as a natural history filmmaker. Andrea had mentioned some of the broadcasters I'd worked for. And it was all about telling stories about others, whether it was other people or environments or wildlife. But then something really extraordinary happened. That's a major plot point. And my whole life and work and my whole worldview were about to be turned upside down. And it was because of this one project that I was invited to work on. And that was this project. It was a film that became Te Mana o Te Moana, the Pacific Voyagers. Some of you might know about it because they did launch their voyage from Aotearoa. But basically, it was the story of about 120 South Pacific Islanders that were going to be sailing a fleet of 7 wakas across the entire Pacific and sharing a message of ocean stewardship. And I was, as you can imagine, extremely excited to be a part of this, and immediately dove into the research and started learning all I could possibly learn about wayfinding and celestial navigation and all these different Pacific cultures that I was going to be working with. And in my own head, I kind of envisioned it to be sort of this this wonderful, cool ocean science mixed with culture, mixed with high seas adventure kind of story. And the one basic truth I guess I was operating on without even really being conscious of it was that, you know, the storyteller always claims the narrative. And no matter how factual a story can be, it is always, always colored by the lens and by the experience of the person telling that story. And so as I was writing the treatment, without really being conscious of it, I was actually inserting my own experience into that story. And that tended to be a problem because then I met this man. This is Tua Pittman. He is a Cook Islands Poe navigator. And we hit it off immediately. He was the master navigator for the entire fleet and really, really became fast friends and had a great relationship. And he pulled me aside pretty early on and said, you know, Gianna, you have all this great experience and credibility, and sure, you're a great writer, but why on earth is a little white chick from New York City telling our story? And, you know, it really did stop me in my tracks and made me really rethink my role about what I was doing as a communicator. And I realized at that moment that it wasn't about telling the story, but rather listening and learning and receiving and really relinquishing that story. And that, I have to say, is a very hard thing for a producer and a writer to do, but it is essential. And the more time that I spent with these amazing people, the more I realized that they were tapped into a way of knowing that I could never access myself because it wasn't my experience. It wasn't part of my culture and it wasn't my story to tell. So in some ways, that was really frustrating, and I would say even heartbreaking in a way, because I wanted it to be my story. I wanted it. I was out there on the wakas with them, and I was experiencing things. And but for the narrative to be truthful, it could absolutely not be through my filter. And when I was able to accept that truth and to let that story go and to hand it over to the people whose story it truly was, that is when, you know, the whole experience became richer, the science became richer, the story really became richer. So I used that experience to then pursue a PhD and start the Ocean Media Institute, which has a mission of expanding the public's understanding of science through this collaborative production of innovative and inclusive media. And so we work with communities all over the world to help them tell their stories by providing media training and arming them with the actual skills that they need to tell their own stories and create solutions-driven media that is done in a way that's very meaningful to them and to their communities. So they're involved in every aspect, from designing the story to, you know, all the pre-production, the why and the what thereafter, through post-production. Because one thing I've learned is that science communication is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And though I worked for almost 20 years making films to, you know, for the general public, the one thing I discovered here was that there is no general public. And as science communicators, I really think we need to pay attention to our audience, and with that, who it is who's telling those stories and delivering the messages. So one thing we're doing with Ocean Media Institute, we have this flagship series called I Am Ocean, which are these little short films that are about people's personal connection to their ocean region. So it's what they love, what they fear, what they hope, what they value, what they care about protecting. And it is through their own voice. There's never a script. It is, you know, never scripted, never contrived, and it really is truly rich and truly genuine. And this past year, I've been building on this since I've been in New Zealand. I received a grant to launch a Moana Media Lab, which is sort of a research hub and sort of media hub for to explore science communication through this cultural lens. And as a pilot project for that, I'm working with Dr. Lusa Moatane here at Otago and secondary teachers in Tonga to engage their students in the science and the story of climate change. So they're able to insert themselves in that story and how it's impacting, how climate change is impacting them. And they become the storytellers, and they're not, it's not about them looking at themselves as victims, but rather change makers. And it's been pretty inspiring, I have to say. And then most recently, we just launched this very exciting project, some colleagues and I, and we're working very closely with the Hokotehi Moriori Trust in the Chatham Islands, and we're co-designing this really big cross-disciplinary project called Moriori Music in Manawa. And this is a big extended reality project that aims to elevate Moriori culture. And this is, for the record, Moriori are not Maori, and they're not Pacifica, so they kind of fall into this space that is not represented. And though they've been recognized by the Crown as one of two Indigenous cultures of this country, it's been really hard for them to sort of share that identity with others, because they kind of go unseen. I mean, even the most New Zealand maps don't even include the Chatham Islands on it. So we're co-designing this big project. They're leading it. We're there to support it and kind of create this media around it. And it's really exciting. So there's really a lot of work to be done in this space. So on that note, I just want to end with this saying, He waka ke noa, we're all in this together. It's when we're able to surrender our version of the story for the truth and the whole of the story and give that narrative over to people to whom it truly belongs, that's when we're able to disrupt that sort of colonial idea of ownership and enrich that collective narrative. So thank you, kia ora and merongo, and please feel free to ask any questions. I know I ran through this really fast. I just had a big cup of coffee before. So anyway, thank you very much.
Tēnā koe, Gianna. Thanks very much for your talk. And yeah, amazing work that you're doing over there with the Ocean Media Institute and just getting stories told and empowering people to tell their stories. What wonderful work. And as Jana has mentioned in the comments here, just what an important time to be telling these Pacific and ocean stories. So thank you for that. And now we get to the part of the session where we're going to be doing a bit of question and answer with all of our speakers today. So if we can kind of spotlight everybody who's been talking today. I'm going to pop on over to our questions here. If you have a question to add, please drop that into the comments, and we'll see if we have got time. We've got about 15 minutes of questions to go here. So I think we'll start with sorry, I'm just looking over the questions here. For Mary Hurley, there's a question from Cara Dwyn asking, how are the teachers that you work with supported before and after the time with the students? Is there more than handouts for them?
Yes. Can I screen share, or do we need permissions to do that? I can share something that I
think you should.
Okay, cool. I'll give it a go. Share that one. So before we arrive at a school, we provide resource books, and I'll see if I can open it up. The resource book, basically, this is the one for this year. Can you see this resource book? Okay, cool. It has the themes, the shows, and what can be expected. So it as you can see here, it guides you how to prepare the teacher. It is kind of like a glorified handout, I would probably say. But it explains what you do before your visit, during your visit, and after your visit. So it has little activities for kids, and then what the teachers can look for. And we also provide extra if people are wanting extra. But this is the basic way that we do it. I'll stop the sharing now.
Great, thanks for that, Mary. Next question is going to be for Zechariah. Zechariah, this is a question from Jenny Chandler. It says, this is such a great project, so important to share and integrate knowledge within the wider community, not just schools. Pacific Unit standards seem like a great way to do this. Does this standard apply across other Pacific cultures in Aotearoa, or is it just for Tokelau?
I have to disclose that I'm not a teacher. I think I'm more of an Indigenous practitioner. But what we understand is And particularly in Auckland, some of the stories we hear, particularly during Polyfest, there were cultural subjects that students were able to do related to cultural performance or cultural retention that had unit standards. And so from that, we were working closely with a teacher, non-Tokelauan teacher, who understood that framework and was able then to use some of those components to actually co-design a Tokelauan program. So my understanding, we're the very first Tokelauan, but it's more related to the Pacific Unit Standard framework. I hope that helps.
I'm sure. Thank you, Zechariah. Next is a question for Jana, Hannah, and Claire. The question is from Georgia. Do your organizations connect between groups other than academic researchers, for example, government, iwi, high school students?
Well, our organisations, some of the individual researchers have their own school projects, but there is no overall coordinated approach.
Yeah, similar situation for us. Some of our members are also ITPs and Wananga, and we also have the Ministry of Education as a member of our network. So we mainly work in terms of technical solutions and connectivity at the moment, but we'd definitely be interested in hearing more opportunities. And I know Jana in the chat mentioned to Mary about maybe a data science roadshow or talking about networking infrastructure. We'd always love to try and see if anyone wants to become a network engineer and maybe work for us at some point. So yeah, that would be really cool.
There's an opportunity for all of you there. Great, thank you. The next question is for Gianna Savoie. The question comes from Georgia. Love this story, Gianna. Do you have any ideas about how best to prompt others who might be in a similar position to you, that you were, to come to that realization themselves? That realization is not always their story, that the realization is that it's not always their story to tell.
That's a tough one, because I don't know, unless it kind of affects you personally, if you really come to it. As far as prompts go, I mean, I think it's just important to keep in the forefront that what we're doing as communicators are, is kind of in service to the science and to the people that we're representing, and to just really try to be conscious of how our own influences come into the way we communicate, and to really just try to step back and think about things in different ways and from different perspectives, and just ask questions. Just always, if you're dealing with other cultures or other people that are different than you, talk to them about what their goal is too, and trying to get their views across, and making sure that you're honoring that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the question is a little more about how to prompt someone else who maybe isn't seeing that they're, being taking more the forefront and telling the story themselves rather than others. But I think that your answer is a great one for all of us to consider, for one thing. And I think the actual question's a pretty tricky one to answer as far as to how to help other people have that realization.
I think you can just gently remind, it's just a gentle reminder. We're all, after the same good goals here. So it's just about being kind and open.
Yes. always good advice. Thank you. Our next question is for Mary Hurley from Sam Kingsbury. For Mary, how well do you find that teachers engage with the pre and post visit activities and learning? And how do you measure that engagement, especially of the post visit content?
Cool. So it is, of course, dependent on the teacher. You can provide as much information as you want, but it's up to the person what they take. Some kids will all show up with their resource booklets and a separate notebook and pens and paper, and they're sitting there scrolling their way through the presentations, and you can tell that they've been prepped by that teacher quite extremely, whereas other kids will just show up and they just engage with the roadshow in the way that they wish. So it varies. I'd say quite well. They generally have an idea of what's going on. And how do we measure the engagement of the post-visit? We have surveys that we do. So during the floor time, we go out there and look at it. And then we also, our admin lady sends surveys to the teachers post our visit to see how they took it in. And also we get these huge paper surveys every while from schools that we have to spend a lot of money on postage to send down to the main office. But yeah, lots of surveys is probably the very simple way of saying that.
Yeah. Great, thank you. We've got one more question here for Jana, Hannah, and Claire. The question is from Caradwin, and do you have an example of how your team of 3 is working as knowledge brokers?
I popped a couple of examples in the chat there. But keen to hear what Hannah and Claire say. For me, it was more, I think, the work we do to build communities. So through our events and through training initiatives, and then bringing different research communities using this infrastructure together on particular projects. And I put a recent one that we just shared in our monthly newsletter that went out, but keen to hear from Hannah and Claire about how they sort of define or would see ourselves as knowledge brokers.
For me, being a knowledge broker is actually the whole listening and providing targeted information, which is, I think, what every other presenter has been talking about as well. And we've several of our own organisations' health research programs have relationships with lots of different organisations, and it's just a matter of making sure that the information gets to them in the way that they need to hear it, and that we hear what they need.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And eResearch is a really, the eResearch conference itself is a really awesome way of doing that and bringing in different stories and different ways that we've been able to help support other organisations. But it's definitely been a shift in approach for me in terms of how we tell our story. A lot of the time we told it from a REANS perspective and we're a member organisation. So being able to work more collaboratively with those members on those projects and shared communications and things like that is an approach that I really like to take, and it's really valuable. And I just really enjoy working with other people and other researchers and hearing what they're working on. So yeah, it's definitely about that collaborative, brokering, but working together approach on producing stories and content.
Yeah, I'm keen to learn from Gianna's approach to it too, because I think that's often the best way is to share your stories, let other people tell it, right? Because then otherwise it seems a bit more genuine. You know, if you say that we're so important and we're delivering value, well, let's hear from the people who are receiving that value and impacts and let them tell it. So I learned a lot from Gianna's talk in that sense.
Learned so much from you guys.
I think we've got time for just one more question. This one's going to be for Zechariah again. Zechariah, your school mahi is really exciting. Is there any way to learn more? I'd love to learn more about the lessons learned and if there are ways to incorporate your best practices into my school outreach work.
Oh, that's a very good question. I think when you do something that hasn't been done before, you're taking a lot of insight, learning, and the ability to actually construct the learnings for the next phase. And because we've piloted at Para College for almost a year now, there is good data that we are learning, particularly from the student feedback. It's helping us to develop resources will be available as the school system is developing the Tokelau language. And so I think to answer that question is my details are within this conference. Please reach out and we're more than happy, because I think just going on back about narrative is that what motivated me and my other community family was a narrative that we were the poorest of the poor. Research was telling us we were the poor, and yet what they did not actually quantify was community well-being, intergeneration in terms of how we look after our elderly, and intergeneration living. And our culture was still rich in terms of community development and relationship. So we were motivated because the narrative did not reflect my reality. I acknowledge that there were some challenges for some families in terms of the reality that we're living in. But generally speaking, I was pushing back because someone was telling the narrative to the power be that we were the poorest of the poor and that it was very dark, which is not true. Mm. What we're doing is creating step change that doesn't have any signpost. We are developing that signpost. And so while we don't have the resources, we're developing resources that we may available to the wider community for those that have an interest in our language and our culture.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're out of time, so unfortunately we're going to have to leave things there. Kia ora, thank you so very much to each of our speakers for sharing your mahi and your expertise with us today. I think we've all taken a lot away from today's session. Before everyone heads off to the rest of your day, I wanted to let you know about an exciting opportunity that's coming up to join the SCANZ Executive Committee. So if you are enjoying the conference this week and last week and would like to be more involved in New Zealand's science communication scene, keep an eye out for the call for applications, which will be going out soon. And also just a reminder to please tune in to the SCANZ conference again tomorrow, same time, same Zoom link, for a series of lightning talks on a range of different science communication topics. It should be a very interesting way to spend an hour. Again, that's on tomorrow, Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. I also encourage you, I think we're collecting some of the comments. There's a lot of really lovely comments and some resources being shared in the chat here. So do take a look at that. And I think we're capturing it as well and can pass that on to the speakers for the questions and things that we didn't get to today. So thank you so again for joining us today. Ka kite, Anar.